Close to 1.5 million sellers that we have on our platform today. How do you manage to help drive growth for them?
And we'll create an institution which, where everybody will say, if you want to do e-commerce, right, Flipkart is the place to do it.
Sakait, one other dimension which is very heartening to note is how the Flipkart Marketplace positively impacts the livelihood of so many millions of sellers.
I said, "Kitna business karte ho Flipkart?" So he said 20 crores. I'm not kidding, okay? I fell off my chair for 30 seconds.
Welcome to another episode of What a Delivery. And it's basically an episode where we come back, discuss technology, business, scale of Indian e-commerce. I'm Ravi Iyer, the CFO of Flipkart. And today, joined with me is Sakait Chaudhary, who is the Senior Vice President and Head of the Flipkart Marketplace. Welcome to the show, Sakait. What's been most interesting is his journey in Flipkart. He spent close to a decade. And what's interesting is that he knows finance as much as I do because he started his career in finance and took the transformation into a business leader. So welcome again, Sakait. Your career has been a not so linear career, if I may say. Obviously, started your career in telecom, moved to retail in Gap, and then of course in Flipkart through running the finance, and then of course supply chain, and now the marketplace business. How does a numbers guy end up doing a marketplace business?
So first of all, thank you, Ravi. Okay, and I'm assuming that you're not going to grill me today for any fancy presentation full with numbers and say, well, Sakait, why is this not happening? Okay, so
yeah, it's not a complete yes, but yeah, sure, we'll give it a pass now.
So look, I always believed, ever since I was a kid, right, that everybody is a born entrepreneur. Okay, whether you do finance or do any other function. Okay, if you have this in you, eventually you should do business someday. That's my core belief, the way I think of problems. What does finance do to you? Okay, it's not something I've planned. I've always thought through like this. Okay, finance provides you an end-to-end view of any business you want to do. Right, as an entrepreneur, when you're not experienced, right, I think finance is the first go-to thought. Right, you understand the P&L, you understand the levers. What will work? Right, if I have to make a profitable business and it has to grow at certain X, right, what are the levers I need to pull, and more importantly, when? Okay, I think that journey and that understanding is something which I tell my kids also, right, that it's very, very pivoting. It's very important for us before you start doing any business that you have a complete understanding of how to think through the blueprinting of the P&L. And once you have complete clarity on it, then in the sequence, right, if I have to drive a 10x growth or 100x growth, right, I have a complete view that, today I will have a technology-driven conversation with my business guys. I want these 20 capabilities come my way. Once that is sorted, what next? Am I trying to do a lot more on marketing? Because now I know that I have created a scalable business, either being a seller side and a customer side, right? And I know for a fact that as the scale generates economies, sellers and customers will be able to see the value through it, right? So I think that is something what finance teaches you. I've done 16 years of finance, and you're kind enough to say that I know more the same as you, but I'm not too sure about it. I think you're far sharper in that space. But yes, that's the way I structure that, why it is very important for everybody and anybody in the world to understand the P&L, right? It's just a blueprinting of entrepreneurial thinking. There's no rocket science in it, right? Many people think that the guys who don't do finance, right, can't do business. I generally believe people who have done finance, understood the blueprinting of P&L, from the learning curve itself, right, it will be faster to come up the curve.
No, absolutely, Sakait. In fact, the way I look at it is that, people consider a P&L to be a budget or a purse strings framework of, how much money you release, but it's fundamentally a culmination of both customer and seller behavior. For example, every line item of P&L in my mind has a role to play. Could be a customer acquisition, a retention, a growth driver, or finally a profitability lever. So I think, the strategic choices, as you rightly articulated in terms of the blueprint or the framework, I think is pretty exciting. And maybe changing gears here, getting more specifically into your role, I think people call you as the guardian of the marketplace in terms of its integrity. Close to 1.5 million sellers that we have on our platform today. How do you manage to help drive growth for them? Historically, the thought was it was more a policing function in terms of how do you do it, but now it's like providing a growth flywheel to a lot of these entrepreneurs, small, medium enterprises. So how do you go around this entire business?
I think it really depends on how do you perceive compliance, right? Is it reactive, right? And if you go back 10 years in life, when we started the journey, we felt it's very, very reactive, right? If you make it as a very proactive shield, okay, and I'll talk more about it, what does it mean, right? I think that journey is very transformative, right, for the ecosystem. Now, if I go back 5-7 years in back, when we started this marketplace business 12-13 years back, right? I think, and we learned to the curve. I think one of the biggest change as we've scaled up is that we used every technological capability to leverage either the seller's ease of doing business or to ensure that we get right set of sellers in the ecosystem. What it means is when I started this business trip 2.5-3 years back, right? I went around, spoke to hundreds of sellers, right? And I think more so to medium and small sellers, because my vision has always been that how do I truly democratize, right? Indian e-commerce, and how to get these millions of small, medium-term enterprises to be, to the growth story for India. And I heard and I understood from them that they are not very skilled when it comes to, to go through complicated rate card structures. They felt worried about, will I get right settlement on time? They were very worried about, I don't understand how do I completely, do onboarding on your process. So what we did in the last 4-5 years is we have completely technologized everything. What we went ahead and told them, you guys just focus on building at what you're good at, right? You build a great product, we will ensure that everything is taken care of. So from that day onwards, for the last 4-5 years, we have been consistently ensuring that, be it. So a lot of people talk about AI on the consumer side, right? I think we have used that word to ensure that a lot of our seller-facing, dashboards, interfaces are completely AI-enabled, right? So today, any seller can come and get seamlessly integrated and be ready to sell on the platform in a matter of hours. This used to take us days, months. They used to infinite tickets, and he used to feel extremely frustrated. So that is one big change. I think the other big change which we have tried to do in this entire journey is that how do I take the burden off of them, going through this complicated settlement of, Flipkart is going to charge me X commission, this is the revenue, I have to pay for shipping goods which Flipkart is going to do in my behalf. We have completely automated everything. This has helped us bring a lot of not so skilled sellers onto the platform because they were just genius at the work they do. They found e-commerce as very intriguing because they were not it was not very easy for them to understand the complex structures of rate card, commissions and stuff like that. I think we have just gone a long way in that journey. I would say there's still long to do. Yeah, it's just another big disruption which is coming our way. Yes, I think that's how we have helped them unlock a lot of economies of scale, but just freeing up their time, making sure that they are able to iterate everything on the back of technology very, very fast and bring a lot more selection on the platform, which is a win-win for customers and sellers at the end of the day.
No, absolutely. And I think, Sakait, this is like a big shift that I've been seeing, at least sitting in my seat. But what's very interesting that you mentioned is the two accesses from a seller, both from the ease of doing business or the cost of doing business. But then a lot of these expenditures that you are undertaking, be it in terms of AI, seller audits, or helping the sellers getting into the digital funnel, are expensive, right? But I do believe these are long-term needed. But so how do you look at an ROI lens from this for these initiatives?
It's a great question, Ravi. I struggle this all my day, right? But I have a very core belief. Okay, like I said, if I have to do together, right, with the institution we are creating, that this journey of how do I make every household, every small household in India, who wants to latch on to Flipkart and sell on Flipkart, technology, AI-driven technology is the only way forward. I'm 200% clear in my head about it. Now, today we see the investment. I see this investment, to pay, us back in 20 years. See, think like this, right? We're creating an institution, right? It's a legacy, the way I think about it, and we'll create an institution which, where everybody will say, if you want to do e-commerce, right, Flipkart is the place to do it. Now, to do that, right, how do you enable the sellers and eventually the customers? Eventually, it's the trust, right, you're building together between two of them. Now, if the more and more we democratize, the more and more selection we bring, right, and you know that, right, we today, we feel proud at Flipkart that we reach every household of India literally now. When you're reaching every household of India and you get able to get the widest selection to them, right, in a very efficient manner. And the reason I call it efficient is technology is not about just reach. Okay, it's also about how do I allow you to cut the flab, which means is how do I bring the certainty of how much you will be able to sell? How do I help you give certainty through some insights on businesses that, if you have 100 units, in your production line at X point, right, you will be able to sell it. He will be able to create more value to the customer, and it's like engine, right, which you kickstart. I think these investments which we are doing today, I'm more than confident in my head, right? 10 years out, maybe on this conversation again, right, we will laugh together and say, it was an if then, right, and we were chatting on ROI. I think we'll get an institution which we'll look at.
Sakait, one other dimension which is very heartening to note is how the Flipkart Marketplace positively impacts the livelihood of so many millions of sellers. Point to note that, very heart-rendering is when you say that the guy has become a lakpati, or now like
Crorepati.
he's become a crorepati now, and there is an evolution that they have seen. Starting up from small, maybe from their homes, and now then getting into some office space, and then creating their own factory, and then building it on. Any anecdotes that you have which kind of indicates how this has happened, or would love to hear from you.
I will say a lot, okay, but I'll give you, every quarter I travel to a lot of sellers to meet them, and one thing which really stuck and that gave me an idea about insight was also, I'll give you a real life story. 6-8 months back, 10 months back, I met a young 18-year-old guy, and he said, "Thank you for coming, blah blah blah." And I said, "What do you do?" He said, "Sir, I sell at Flipkart, and I sell in these categories." I said, "Okay." And as what I've imagined, he would have been selling 50 lakh, 1 crore kind of business, and he's very excited, young guy, 18 years old, full of energy, eyes full of dreams. I said, "Kitna business karte ho Flipkart pe?" So he said 20 crores. And I mean, I'm not kidding. I thought he's confused between million and crores. So I asked him again. I said, "Kitna business karte ho Flipkart pe?" He said, 20 crore ka karte hain. And I was like shocked. And he said, तो मैंने कहा, और क्या करना चाहते हो? कहते, "सर, अगले साल 100 crore का करना चाहते हैं." I'm not kidding, okay? I fell off my chair for 30 seconds. For the fact that guy had so much in him that he was clear that he wants to know the recipe from us कि 100 crore कैसे करना है, sir. Okay, and that's how I started thinking about this concept of edge and insights, right, on platform. And we chatted and chatted, right? He was willing to take any risk. He was completely in that zone that I love Flipkart as a platform. I trust you. You tell me what to do and I'll make it happen. Okay, that kind of zone. And I felt even more, thrilled, encouraged that that is a kind of ecosystem where we are able to drive at Flipkart, right? And then I asked him कि Flipkart Insight के बारे में कभी सुना है? तो सर सुना है, but सर लोग आपके कैम बताते हैं, सर अगर वो प्लेटफॉर्म पे कुछ बन जाएगा तो सर अच्छा रहेगा. Platform here is seller dashboards for them. And that's how the idea came to me when I came, and I told first thing we have to do technologies, we'll create a seller self-reliant, sell dashboard which any and every small seller can think, see, either to grow existing verticals or categories or catalogs, right? And give him meaningful insights, right? For instance, बारिश होने वाली है, right? So how many umbrellas we going to sell in next month, 1 month, 2 months? That's an insight we have for last 15 years of business we built, right? गर्मी आ गई है, right? I was zapped to meet one of the guys in Merit, right? तो मैं बोला आप क्या करते हैं? तो बोला सर वो मच्छरदानी बनाते हैं. अब if you go back, it's your childhood, right? I don't even remember when I did last sleep in मच्छरदानी, right? तो मैंने उससे पूछा भाई कितना बिजनेस करते हो? सर पहले 2 फैक्ट्री था, 5 हो गया. सर 10 करना चाहता हूँ. those are kind of examples, right, which keep us moving at Flipkart.
No, I think that's very well said, Sakait. In fact, building the long-term lens is something which is also part of our boardroom conversations. And one of the key things that we also discuss is, how do you, kind of get familiarized with the formalization hurdle, which is basically how do you get and onboard the millions of sellers into the tax-compliant digital economy. Uh, uh, what's the plan there, and how do you look at building them more? Because what was most exciting, and we've gone on visits together, is saris in Surat to cottonware in Tirupur to in the north accessories and the Punjab belt for a lot of the hosiery and sports and other equipments. But how do you go around getting them onboarded into this journey of the marketplace business?
So look, I keep telling many people, see, we call them seller IDs, right, for lack of better word. I think, but at the end of the day, they are entrepreneurs, okay? They're young, thriving people who want to make a business out of everything they're trying to do, right? They are 200% committed, right, to make a great business of whatever journey they start. Now, if I look at it, what is our job at Flipkart? Our job is to make sure that how do we give them right tools, technology, resources.
In
right,
fact, Flipkart Edge is a passion project of yours, so yeah, maybe you can.
Yeah, so look, one of the, you said it, like one of the biggest problem which when we started, onboarding newer sellers and newer selection, one of the feedback which I learned, and I see data myself, like I said, I'm a data freak, right? I figured out a problem that a lot of sellers who want to diversify, who want to build a bigger business, they were not getting right side of insights, right? And we came out with this platform called, Edge. It's very, 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 very close to my heart. What we try to do here is we tell sellers that, you're selling this. By the way, if I take a competitive lens is here the holistic lens of the market, right? We also give them a lot of feedbacks on, your quality, from customers' returns. These are the issues which we believe is not working well on the quality parameters. We also give them insights that, for instance, if you're trying to sell a lot more in Northeast, what is the color of the sari you have to sell, right? If you're going down south, right, what is the seasonality, right, which will allow you to diversify your catalog, because see, at the end of the catalog is also investment he's trying to do, right? We want him to win fast, we want him to win right. These kinds of insights, right, has helped us see a lot of, I will focus again, a lot of small and medium sellers, right, which we felt were struggling, right? These insights, which are very, very real time, have helped them really exponentially grow on the platform, right? This also gives a lot more confidence to us that when we go and reach to a far wider, smaller set of sellers, right? Because at the end of the day, we feel accountable that when we ask them, and when they have a dream to sell at us on Flipkart, how do we feel ourselves accountable through tools, to technology, that we coach them right, we guide them right, so that they're able to bring a meaningful business. They have families, they have kids. I feel that it's the first sense of responsibility, right, which starts from the institution like us. We're trying to create together that how do we enable right set of resources to them. These insights I have, and I can tell you with fair amount of confidence today, is working well. We are not done yet. We'll create many more. How do you diversify to your new category? How do you go to a new vertical, right? So that not only they keep growing, we're also thinking how do we excel, how do we generate more steam, right, to help them grow even faster in coming years. So we're giving them information that in next season, these are the categories where you should think of diversifying.
No, absolutely, Sakait. In fact, I was also reflecting. So like today, right from a seller onboarding journey, which happens in minutes, to all the tooling that you mentioned, their ability to look at the amount of working capital they invest, the kind of pricing effectiveness that they need to see. I think all this technology is actually helping them become, or supporting them as a virtual assistant or a CFO in some matter where they're able to get everything in one place. But shifting gears slightly here, I think, there is a need to have a fine balance in the marketplace. I mean, obviously there are, global brands and a lot of national brands which sell on the marketplace. And then on the other end, there are tens and thousands or lakhs of artisans and small enterprises which are getting into the digital ecosystem. There is a value proposition which is there. I mean, our consumers are value conscious. You are also leading Shopsy, which is in the hyper value segment. And then, of course, the Flipkart Marketplace also lends itself to a large part of the value market. How do you strike a fair balance between balancing the strong branded play versus the unbranded or the localized play, and especially when you want to get more and more of the democratization or sellers coming on boarded? So how do you look at it?
It's a tough one, right? Okay, but I'll tell you where my head is on this bit. Okay, I believe if you look at India, India is a very heterogeneous consumer market, right? And every customer is a different life cycle, right? So if you look at Gen Z guys, right, their go-to strategy is digital. But if you go to tier 4, 5, 6 towns, right, people want to do commerce, they want to try us, but they're extremely value conscious. Now, what is different about Shopsy? I'll just simply put it in very summarized way, and then I'll give a double down on this. So in Shopsy, we want to create a hyper value, okay? And I'll tell you why hyper value. And then we're also seeing that how do we bring our Shopsy as a gamification-led commerce? Quality is top notch in my mind. I always tell people, I'm okay to sell 1 rupee expensive, but I want quality intent, because that's the first lever of trust in my head, right? That's how you build a repeatability in any business model. True. You get the right quality at a right price, and when they come to the platform, help them play or help them spend time what they love. So what early reads for us, we just revamping the platform, is we've seen our engagement has gone up, right? Customers who are coming, they're surfing a lot of something we call at Flipkart as infinite feeds. You're aware of it, right? Where you can have an infinite selection view. The engagement is up, so we're finding it healthy. People who have come first time, they've come back second time, and they've clicked and they've bought it. So that means they're building our trust. So what we're trying to do through Shopsy is we're trying to bring a not so entrenched e-commerce customer onto the commerce. And as and when he builds his trust, transact 1 time, 2 time, I'll keep providing him in a hyper value. And as and when he is in his journey of customer path, right, his GDP per capita goes. India is an aspirational country, and that's a normal organic journey of his customer. That's the role Shopsy is going to play in this entire Flipkart ecosystem. Flipkart will play at the middle part and the top market. Shopsy will play in the low end of the market. That's the bulk of the market. We're trying to get fastest in that space, get hold of customers, win their trust, and upgrade them to Flipkart, right? Either a mass premium or a premium product as and when we are ready.
I think it's a great strategy as one penetrates the tier 4, 5, 6. I think you have cost structures between platforms to help synergize the cost to ensure that the lowest cost to serve. And anyway, in the Flipkart Marketplace, as you rightly said, the upgrade journey continues for those consumers who are first to the commerce journey. But very interestingly, the overall commerce landscape is so huge, and of course, e-commerce overall is continues to grow and accelerate. But then there is a very important dynamic which has come into the market, which is quick commerce, right? And in my mind, obviously, it plays to a certain cohort of users, but then there is a phenomena of getting deliveries in 10 minutes, 15 minutes kind of things. And then there is, of course, the game where you play the large value commerce, where you get infinite selection, and obviously you are able to get products from the north of the country to the south consumer, and vice versa, from the east to the west. How do you see the role of quick commerce panning out?
It's quite a little, okay. But if I were to step back and think, okay, my personal belief is Flipkart is one, I always call it an institution, I've never called it an app, okay? One place, right, which provides every customer, right, who comes on Flipkart an opportunity. What are you coming for? At any point of time, think India is a 1 trillion market, right? Within that, 700 billion give and take is grocery, 300 is retail, and grocery e-com penetration is less than 1.5%. In my mind, if we were to drive a commerce penetration in India, grocery retail has to lead it from the front. Now, if you look at the Flipkart, right, what are we trying to do? We are trying to provide a customer 3 unique opportunities. You come for infinite selection, we have a great marketplace. We provide an infinite value. We reach pretty much every pin code of India. We're there. If you have come for a mission, which I call in my mind as a basket, right? Am I creating a hyper value platform where I can provide you a basket, which is one of the most competitive in India? That's what we're trying to get there. And within 30 minutes, if you look at tier 3, 4, 5, 6 customers, this is exactly what they're looking for. Now, will I necessarily get them 10 minutes? The answer is no. Will I get them in an hour? A value right, which they've not heard of, and a convenience of doorstep delivery with no questions asked, return, I think it is one of the most compelling customer value proposition, right, we would have created at Flipkart. So that's the bulk of that customer, right, which I called in my mind mass India. We're trying to get them to service that need. I think then there's a I will say 2%, some people say 5%, they're ultra premium customers, right? I need it now, and that's pretty much the quick commerce. We started, we're aggressively expanding. I think that's very, very essential for us, because depending on what I've come to shop for, that's the service of quick commerce will play. But I think if you were to think through, we are one of the best placed institution, right, which provides customer all choices. You come to shop for selection, we are the place. You come to buy, for a quick convenience, we got an answer for you. And and the least but not the last, if you are looking for a hyper value, basket building grocery, which is $700 billion market, we are the place to shop. We are the destination to that. I think from that gamut, I generally believe we will be able to close loop customer end to end over a course of journey.
No, I think I think it's well summarized, Sakait. Now, I was reflecting while you were talking. The fact that it serves multiple cohorts or archetypes of customers in their value journey is through the multiple modes that we have. And it's so unique that India being such a wide and diverse market with so many consumers, that for the quick consumer, it'll be hard to even imagine our Surat sari sellers trying to get the kind of selection that you would want to store in a neighborhood, in a rich neighborhood in, let's say, Worli or Bandra for that matter, to be able to kind of have those kind of stocking done. So the fact that certain categories don't lend itself to it, let's say even televisions, where you want to scroll, a rich catalog of products, that finally there will be a lot of essentials and those kind of categories which lend itself more to it. But as you said, infinite feeds and selection, you need to come to the Flipkart Marketplace. But thanks again, Sakait. I think this has been a market or let's say a masterclass on the marketplace, and it's been a pleasure having you here. Thanks once again.
Thank you, Ravi, for hosting me. It was absolutely fantastic, right, having a chat with you, and a very candid one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks again, audience. I hope you liked this session of Water Delivery. We hope to come back soon with more interesting insights on multiple topics impacting Indian e-commerce and the consumer journeys.